Nice. I like that Rye's the only one not using the noise suppression, so it's the only clap I heard. All right, how do I do this? Welcome back to Bigger Fish. Wow, that's not a clean intro. Hang on.
Hello there.
I've been doing this for like 11 years. Welcome back to Always Bigger Fish, the show answering questions you didn't think to ask, continuing our coverage of Jedi. I almost said Jedi Star Wars Fallen Order. That's not it. Star Wars Jedi Fallen. Cal's. He's in a prison this time. That's the one.
I want you to know I'm making currently. I have an edit that is a montage of you messing up Star Wars titles. So thank you.
They're all so bad and confusing because Lucas tries to be. I hate it, and I feel like he did it on purpose just to fuck with me too.
No, there's a great clip. I don't remember which one of our things it was, but there's a great clip of ours where you go, yeah, the third movie, and then Darth said, he said Revenge of the Sith, and I said Return of the. Somebody said Return of the Jedi, and I said Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
we're all technically correct, but
you're all technically correct. I mean, technically, anything after the third original could be a third film if you just start counting at a different number. You know, everything's relative and time is made up. What I'm saying is, I got way too high last night when I played this. Now, this is important now, let me explain myself, okay? I forgot that I hadn't played this level for this recording. What usually happens is we finish our recording sessions, I go to lunch, I come back home, I play the next session in case you guys have questions. That didn't happen last time, because I got too drunk at lunch. And then I forgot I hadn't played it. And then yesterday, I've been on holiday for a couple days, and my ritual has been, at about 5 or 6, I have a few beers, get a little bit zoinked, and continue Baldur's Gate 3. And I was on the final mission, and I was like, well, I may as well finish the game, forgetting it's Baldur's Gate 3, so the final mission is like 60 hours long. So I started it, and I was like, that's okay. And then looked at the time and went, fuck, it's 8 p.m, we have to record tomorrow morning, and I still haven't played the Star Wars video game. So then, naturally, I was like, well, what if I smoke another and go and play the Star Wars video game? Which turns out very quick, very short, because bad level, which is why I made it very short. The consequence of that is my notes are absolutely fucking unhinged. The first dot point I have is, oh my god, I'm so high. Why did I wait till the night before, bro? Dog, I'm so high. So suffice it to say, I'm a little hungover this morning, but I had a great time last night. Before we get into Darth's, my second note is Darth's an idiot. What did he do? He needs to tell us.
Yeah.
Before all of that, Chuck, are you in the document?
Yes.
Could you read the summary?
Oh no. So I was in the document. I closed.
Then you closed it. You stitched yourself up.
We were closing too many things. All right. Chapter 4. Cal wakes up in a jail cell after an oddly short level of puzzles where Cal and BD proceed to not talk about Trilla and Seer. Cal enters a combat arena where the bad guys give him back his laser sword. He kills a bunch of stuff gladiator style, then the Mantis arrives to rescue him.
Read the second bit, it's funny.
This bottle episode done with, the gang heads for Kashyyyk and along the way proceeds to not talk about Seer and Trilla some more. End of episode.
I think this is so I want to explain my reasoning in separating this. I think this is the weakest and worst part of the game, and everything after this is exclusively bangers. It's like they put this weird bad thing just before they started just knocking home runs. It's absolutely bizarre. What did you guys think high level of this?
I didn't think it was that bad.
Interesting.
I mean, keep in mind,
if David hated it, then we loved it.
Yeah,
I mean, keep in mind, I hate this game, and when my friend that I was talking about was who's really good at puzzles. Like, she was watching me play this, and we were also drinking at the same time. That didn't help matters, but we got to the part where the stopping point was play until you catch a ride from an unusual friend and return to the ship with a new destination. We're like, we're here. We're already here. Well, that wasn't that bad at all.
Yeah.
And it was surprisingly short, which was appreciated. But
Okay, interesting.
I hated Kashyyyk. I kind of, high level didn't really bother me that much. The first part I thought was okay. Then we got to a bit of a cliche that I thought, and then I hated Kashyyyk, and then that was over.
This was going to be a question I was going to ask: is did everyone play? Where did you guys stop? Because I realized in retrospect it was a bit of a misleading direction. Did you guys do Kashyyyk? It sounds like Riot did. Darth, where did you stop playing?
No, I literally got back on the ship. So like I went all the way back. You fly the Feathered Friend and then get back on the ship after going through reverse the level.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you guys both did the full Kashyyyk bit.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
I actually went to Dathomir looking for a save point, but couldn't find one. I went, fuck it, I'm out.
I told you not to go to Dathomir yet.
No.
That's
there's a save point in the ship.
There's a save point in the back.
Really?
Back of the ship, yeah.
Oh my god.
Like in your literal bedroom in the ship.
Yeah, Cal doesn't sleep, he meditates.
I hate this game.
Well, while you're out dating women, Cal was studying the blade. Okay, yeah. Look, here's the thing. I think that the Kashyyyk is just like, I think it's exclusively bangers. As far as like a level goes. I just think this prison level's ass. Like it's got
really?
one puzzle. It's got one puzzle and it's misleading. To set it up for people who haven't played it. Basically, you're in this like little underground prison and Cal is trying to break out. There's no enemies. You don't have your laser sword. And you come up to an elevator and there's 3 anchor points for 3 different like charging cables that you can pull and plug into stuff with the Force. And it's a misdirect because you have to pull one of them to a anchor point outside of that area to unlock a passage to go find BD1, and then you connect all of the cables to the obvious places where they connect so that BD1 can do a zappy zap and let you out. And it's like, why the half-hearted misdirect? Like it's just such a weird choice that doesn't add anything for me. I don't know. I just think it's like...
See, I disagree with you on that because I think the misdirect is part of the puzzle because you walk in there, or I'm gonna go ahead and probably guess that most of us had the same experience where we plugged in a bunch of things and it didn't work first. Is that right for everybody?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the puzzle because like you go, all right, well that one's connected to that one and this one's connected to this one, so that one must go to connect to that one, and it's not working. And then so again, my friend as we go to puzzles is like we take a step back and then we're like, oh, that one has power, so that one needs to be unplugged and go to that one, and that needs to get plugged over there to run the power over there. It makes sense. So that didn't really take very long. What I want to know is how long was Darth in the jail cell?
Oh my god. So I gotta, hang on, let me bring it up, because I gotta read the message that we got in our group chat. Now, something that the listener may not have necessarily clued into is we have a pretty like extensible ongoing group chat. Let me see if I can find this message. It was a couple days ago, wasn't it? What did you say? Darth says, okay, so, say hello for me, Darth. I need to get your accent.
Hello there.
Hello there. Okay, so I've been running in circles around this jail cell for 20 min. IDKY this section that beat me, but I'm totally stuck. The Force doesn't work on anything I can find. And I'm like, wait, you haven't even left the cell? And then you're like, no, I'm stuck. I literally cannot get out. So yeah, what happened, man? Talk us through it.
Okay, so I didn't time it, but I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that I didn't even message you guys until I had been trying for like 15 solid minutes to get out of this cursed cell. I tried every force power in every combination. I tried everything on every glowing blue thing in that room, and nothing worked. And then I messaged you and you said, go stand by the front door and turn around and face the room. So then I started doing that, and I went through the whole thing again, and I looked at every glowing blue thing, and I did the force on every glowing blue thing, and like nothing worked. And I was just running around trying everything that I could think of. And eventually I was like, let me go into my settings and double check I'm not doing something stupid. I was doing something stupid. I wasn't using force pull. I was using force stasis.
Oh my god, dude.
The whole time. For 20 minutes, I was stuck because I forgot which button force pull was.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so
after I figured out what force pull was, less than 5 minutes, I was out of there. And moving on.
okay, so what we're learning is that 3 old dudes shouldn't play video games. I think is
That should be the takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the end of the level and tell you what I discovered there, because I discovered I had like 4 more force powers that I had forgotten existed.
such as
So, you have like a jump in the air, and then you fist pound into the ground, and like everyone in a radius like gets damaged. You have like a dash forward and slash, and everyone in front of you gets damaged. The force throw, I unlocked that and didn't think about it again, so I never used the force throw until the end of the level. The lightsaber throw?
okay.
Yeah. So like all I ever use is like I force pull enemies to me and then I throw them off a cliff because that's hilarious, and then I just use like regular slashes.
I mean, that is
so I forgot
pretty
all these
funny.
other
Yeah.
I forgot all these other abilities like even existed. And I was going through the skill tree and I was like, "Oh."
Okay, so you had sort of you're having a weird experience. Christ. Like
that has been that's been the continual theme for me playing this game is Darth is having a different experience than the rest of the group.
Okay, well, I mean, aside from that, I guess, okay, prison level, obviously it sounds like you had a bit of dramas. I was worried about Rye with the gladiator arena. How did you go fighting in the gladiator arena? Or was the difficulty slider adequate that you were able to get through it?
Oh, I was on the lowest level, so I just smoked everybody. But like, my friend, my friend watched and making fun of me. Goes, she's like, imagine if it wasn't on the lowest difficulty. I was like, shut up. But there was a moment previous to that, which I do want to mention. It's probably sort of like the highlight of the evening for me, and it was as a storytelling thing that I really like, where when you find Beatty, and he's like on the desk on the other side of the room, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, well, he could just like walk out of there, right? And then, but like it was like it came and it went like immediately as a thought in my head, and I get into the room, and my friend loudly in my ear goes, well, why didn't he just walk out? And then Cal goes, let me get that restraining bolt off of you. And I was like, yes, that is the thing that I love. The question of why didn't they just asked and answered like perfectly, because I had her saying it and then the game answering it audibly.
Well, there was also a second part to that, though. In order to get out of the room, Cal had to force pull a thing off the metal thing off the wall to reveal the wires behind it, so BB-8 couldn't even splice to get the door open if Cal wasn't there to use the force.
And it also explains why, because my initial thought was like, why didn't they just kill him? And it's like, well, because they want him to fight in their like a little gladiator arena. So like as far as like world building goes, it's a pretty tight little like setup and payoff, I think. It does.
I always appreciate stuff like that, because it tells you that somebody in either the story or design department sat down and went and actually thought about it and said, somebody's going to ask this question.
Yeah. It reminds me of that Gilroy quote when, you know, that I might have brought this up before, but they're asking him like, you know, how many seasons of Andor are you doing? And he's like, I'd like to do 5, but it will kill me. Because it's exhausting, because like every location you visit, you have to have answered every single question about it before you even write a single scene there. And if it's unsuitable, then you need to write yourself another location and answer all those questions all over again. And that's a guy that hates Star Wars. Like, and that's, I think, that's what I kind of love about people that, exactly what you're saying, which is like people that give a shit about writing and telling stories, is like, you go that extra effort to go, all right, like, how do we make sure this feels cohesive and coherent? You know, and it may raise questions like, hey, what's the deal with this gladiator pit? And like, who runs it? And how does that all work? And that's like an interesting question that just doesn't need to be answered in this story. Like it can just be texture to the world. I have many questions about it, but I think it's good that the story doesn't feel the need. It doesn't have the Lucas problem of like everything needing to be explained explicitly. Like no one sits you down and goes, "Listen, bub, this is how the gladiator pit works." It just is. And I appreciate that about, you know, a lot of the story, especially given it's a video game, right? You know, there's ways in which other video games texture in this stuff with things like audio, you know, logs or pickups that you can read. Like if they give control specifically, where I read everything I picked up and it all ruled. But this is very much, so far at least, kind of surface level in what it's doing, and it does it all very well. So yeah, I completely agree.
The interesting thing that's kind of related to that was that when you first get out of the room and you're walking around and you're finding all of these monsters that are behind the cage doors, and the context doesn't make sense, because at first I'm thinking, okay, this guy's just collecting all of these cool creatures and I was one of his cool creatures, but why are half of them laying in their cells dead, and how could you examine them if they're in these cells that are not pretty and not meant to be examined? And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, so all these are just fighting animals. Now everything, the way the whole thing was built, now it makes so much more sense. And I loved the design of it. Like, it wasn't the strongest story element, but I love, like, when you see the hordes of dead animals falling from the sky down into the pit, like they were dying in the arena and being dropped down. Like, I loved the aesthetic of pretty much everything. Did y'all see there was this one like trick force field down in that pit, the section where there's all the dead animals falling from the sky? You know what I'm talking about, with the force field that was down in there, and like you get down and it's just like a room.
Yeah, I thought
and then
that
it looks like there's like glowing blue pipes on the outside that it looks like you're supposed to pull. I spent like a long time trying to figure out, what are you supposed to do here? And then it turns out nothing. You were supposed to be grabbing the vine and going up top to get BB in the first place.
I spent like a good 15 minutes being like, what is this? Yeah, I had the same problem.
But I also love, there's so much about this game that is just like the aesthetic of it, and I loved that opening level, especially when I first saw them falling through the sky down into that. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I loved it.
I knew this was going to be like some Darth catnip. This game in particular is like, hey, wasn't original Star Wars fucking cool? And you're like, yeah, I think it was though. Like, this is this game and cribbing off of that.
And then, like, something I'm trying to figure out, when he gets up into the arena, like one of his first bits of dialogue is, oh, I recognize that band. And
I've written down here, why does Cal say I recognize this band?
So there's two options I could think of. Like, either this guy is like rich enough that he hired like the Backstreet Boys or whatever their space version is, and so it's like a really popular band that's playing at this arena, or this thing is just broadcast live around the galaxy because it's like football or whatever, and people just watch it. And so Cal has watched this before.
Oh.
Either option is kind of interesting.
I mean, it's a totalitarian empire. It's like a conservative pipe dream to have like blood sports on TV, right? Like, this is just the Hunger Games. Maybe that's what's up. Maybe this is the Empire's Hunger Games, you know?
And I also love that. I love that music. It also sounded very much like the very first song. Like it was the same genre, but a different group that created it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this yet. This game series really leans into the fact that there is Star Wars music, and in the second game there will be Star Wars records that you collect, like holotapes of songs, which is like super interesting because it's just not a... I mean, it's a video game, so like there's a reason why they do that, right? So you can play music whenever you want. But it's a super like weird bit of world building that we just don't get. Like, it's like, you know, Rye always talks about, like, what do they do for fun? And it's like, yeah, well, music is a big part of recreation. And outside of one or two instances in the original, where you get, you know, you're in the cantina and then you get that absolutely batshit sequence in Jabba's palace or whatever, we don't really get music as a focal point after the original, like, sort of 3 films. So I think it's noteworthy that like, it's clear that Cal's interested in music, is I guess my read from this, right? However you spin it, Cal's a guy that listened to a lot of music doing his job, right? He was working manual labor for a number of years. If you've ever done jobs like that, you know that a big part of that is like when you're cleaning or you're doing lifting or you're doing like the labor part of it, you might have in the the earpods and have on the songs and stuff. And so it's just like it's a cool character note that he is quite like he's a ground level dude. He's got some of that like that Luke energy to him of like he's just one of the dudes out here trying to get it done, and like he has an appreciation for things that characters around whom these stories usually orbit are not interested in, right? Anakin isn't putting on the jukebox and playing his favorite hip-hop tune, you know what I mean? Like he's sitting there and brooding and thinking about the dark side and destiny and shit. And in the in the sequel trilogy, right, like they're too busy with all that grand sort of J.J. Abrams puzzle box destiny shit to worry about like having a life and interests. And it's just I think it's a flavorful character note that I wish they did more with. There's a lot in this where I'm like, I wish this was more expansive for Cal, and they just don't have the page space seemingly to do it. The sequel hits all of those notes, but yeah, I think it's just like a noteworthy thing for him to say that got me thinking about all of that. So I'm glad that you raised it, because the note I had before that was man, why am I stuck in this hole? These Doritos are good. Should I eat the donut in the fridge though? So I don't know. The munchies are kicked in, I guess.
So I feel like this is one of those things where I feel like y'all are thinking about it a bit too deeply. Whereas
that's my thing.
That's what we do.
I know. But like, I think you're extrapolating, or rather, I would say, you are extrapolating beyond the original intention of why it was done. So like, you can read it as this is a cool character note about Cal and the world and etc. Whereas like I heard it as just sort of, this is a signal, this of that word that you like to use, the diegetic thing, where like this music is not for us, or not just for us. Music is occurring in the world.
Oh, that is a good point. Yeah, okay, because that communicates that it's like what Darth was alluding to, right? It's like there's an audience that music is for.
Yeah. So but here's the thing though, is what you do. This is sort of like a death of the author thing, right? Where it's like that might have been the original intention, but if you go beyond that original intention, you also lead to these other things, which says stuff about the character and the world, etc.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yes, and. Oh god, the word "and" sucks in my accent. I guess what I would yes. I think we're
put a pin in that. How else would you say it?
How else would I say what?
And
if I'm British, I might say yes. Yes,
there's no British. We're all colonials here. There's no Brits here.
It's anyway, my point being, I think what's noteworthy, I don't know, I think Star Wars especially, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, because you guys have poisoned me with your cursed knowledge. Something I've been thinking about a lot is this idea of intertext, and Star Wars in particular interests me because a lot of it's bad, and like pretty bad, but it's all interesting, and I think that's difficult to do. Like even this asterisk, except a lot of the stuff in the sequels, asterisk except everything after The Last Jedi. But I think the critical reevaluation of the prequels has only happened because there's interesting stuff in there. Like I think when you look at those films and the context under which they were made, and the intertext they have with each other and with what was happening in America, even as in The Phantom Menace, Lucas seemingly predicts what's going to happen with America and George Bush, or he at least is intuiting what's in the air around the kind of like proto-fascism and the utilization of the military-industrial complex as like a political mechanism. They are interesting, and they say interesting things, or they are thinking about interesting things that we might say things about. Whereas I think particularly the original stories are very straightforward in the things that Lucas is thinking about, right? He's obviously cribbing off of we talked about this a million times, but he's cribbing off of the Flash Gordon stuff, right? These kind of picaresque, style films where you would walk into a theater. Actually, we haven't said this on this show, but the idea of those is that you didn't go to see a film at a particular time. You went to a theater for a few hours, and you'd walk in, and there would be something playing, and so you'd walk in the middle of a scene, in the middle of something happening. And the original Star Wars is supposed to replicate that, where you're just in it and you have to try and figure out what's happening as you go. And this era of the story, which is obviously contiguous with everything that Disney is doing, Andor, Mando, I almost said Mandor. It is an era that's interesting because we just don't have any material that looks like this anymore in the Star Wars universe outside of the things they keep focusing on. Like the story beyond, they've fucked up. We've all acknowledged that a million times. They've kind of poisoned the well, and so they are stuck in this like perennial golden era of Star Wars stories. And like the whole idea of a character in that space that's just operating in a different vector of like life, right? He's an industrial scrap dude. Like he's a laborer at the start of this game. Like that to me is as interesting as the Andor. Not as interesting. It has the same interesting ideas that Andor does, where it's not space wizards, it's this other thing, and then the game parlays that into being about space wizards in a way that is necessary because it's a video game, and that's the stuff that Darth likes, I think.
That would be a really interesting thing for their world building, because you just mentioned how, like, Cal's backstory being a scrap or whatever. Like, that never is a tool that he uses again that I've seen so far. And, like, what if he had been the one to teach the droid how to hack doors? He's like, first you take this wire, and then you splice it, and then you touch these two wires together, and then after that, the droid can do it. But then it would be like him actually using the skills that he has at the beginning of the game to help progress the game. But it's like his whole introduction is just kind of forgotten about.
That's a good point.
I want to put a pin in this. You reminded me of something unrelated to what we're talking about that I wanted to discuss at the end of today's proceedings.
Okay. I mean, I got nothing else
because I'm going to forget.
Huh?
Well, the very, very end had me kind of confused because, as far as I know, he was off on Zepho, whatever planet he was on. He got kidnapped down in like the underground caverns, right, by this mercenary, and then his crew somehow knew where he was and to go rescue him right from the pit where he was fighting, and it's never explained, and that kind of like broke me a little bit. I was like angry.
And then you had a classic Darth like logic don't work moment.
Yeah. And then like after that, Kryze sits down with you and has this whole thing where he's like apologizing because he put you in danger. And
yeah,
I had no idea what he was talking about. Yeah, I'm like, I got kidnapped.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. When like that I had completely forgotten about that. I was not good about taking notes on this, but like, yeah, that conversation where Kryze comes in, he's like, really sorry, man. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? First of all, and second of all, who are you?
Yeah.
But I did not even clock the and that's my thing. This is a little bit embarrassing, like, and I'm gonna blame the alcohol here, but like the third party intervention is what that is right there. Now, I will say that it does. I have some rules that I've one of the scripts that I worked on or have been working on for several years now, actually. But it does follow one of my rules for how you make a third-party intervention work, because I didn't notice it at all. Them showing up like that. So that's one. So I would say that, yeah, it does follow one of my rules for third-party interventions or how to make them work. But like, yeah, I didn't clock it at all that like they just showed up sort of out of the blue, because it as part of like story structure, it made sense because you have like the waves of minions and they get harder, and then you have the boss and you defeat him and then you get rescued, and that's how you get out of there. So
I mean, it fit what I had asked for. Like that's literally something I'd asked for, I think in the last recording or the first recording. I was like, have the ship show up at the end so I don't have to backtrack through the whole thing and forget what I just did.
Yeah.
And now they did it and I'm complaining about it.
No pleasing some
I'm
people.
like, not like that.
No pleasing some people. It's just what Jesus said, so.
No, it's a good point.
Now listen, I don't like it for a different reason. The third party intervention, I'm kind of with Riot. It didn't rub me this way or that way. I just think it's like a deeply uninteresting way to resolve this level. Like, this is the type of game where this should have been an extra hour. You should have had to like escape the pit, work your way through this weird like, outlaw
and
scrap
shut
planet.
The whole operation down.
You're a Jedi, right? Like that's what Cal would do. I guess he's not there yet, right? He's not fully in hero mode yet. But yeah, like there's a lot of interesting play you could get here with like world building, texture, character development. He could confront the dude in charge and have that moment of like, am I going to ace this dude or let him go? Because that's going to become a question that gets raised in this story, right? We get that with the Ninth Sister, where it's like, is Cal the type of guy? He's fine killing stormtroopers because it's okay to kill Nazis. Like, no one's on the other side of that argument. But like, will he ace someone in cold blood? And we don't know the answer yet. We know that he'll do it if he's threatened, but we don't know if he will kill someone unarmed for to do the right thing. We don't have an answer to that yet. And we still don't at the end of this kind of session. And
Another
just
reason that he's okay with just leaving that it wasn't a planet, asteroid. Another reason that he was okay with just leaving it and the audience is okay with him just leaving was that everything that you saw down in the cages was a mindless creature. If there were like slave children down there and he left them, then people would have been like, whoa, hold up, Jedi, what are you doing? Go rescue them. But because they're like rabid dogs, you're like, okay, they can just stay there in jails and they could fight to the death and we don't care.
Yeah, they would have been, Finn and Rose on Canto Bight.
Yeah, exactly. Or he walks up and he said, he goes up to the cage of children and he's like, okay, one at a time, come up to the thing. And he checks to see if they're force sensitive. And then if they are, he takes them with him. And then if they're not, they don't care. Into the pit with you. Yeah. The trash you are.
That would be a
He's like Santa.
Turn.
He's like, are you on my list? Are you on my list?
See, that would be something you could do in Baldur's Gate 3.
And it's probably something my character would do in Baldur's Gate 3. She's the worst. That game rules, by the way. Anyway.
It does.
It's been so close. I really thought I was going to finish it last night. I think I still have like 20 hours left.
We finished murdering the Kresh today.
Oh, you got it.
We walked in there, and my friend immediately said, "We're going to kill all of these people." She's racist towards Githyanki. She does not.
Yeah,
like them.
they're racist to everyone else. So fucking get them. Like I don't know, like kill them. Yeah. I have complicated feelings about that. They've got like that sand people energy where it's like it feels like even though no one says it, the word people is like the suffix to their fucking species of people, which is how you know that people don't treat them like people. Because you don't call them sand people because you view them as people, right? Like that's deliberately othering. Anyway, the Grease apology thing. I've just been scrolling back through my notes and I literally cannot find what he's apologizing for. So the last thing that Grease does is he warns you. So on Kashyyyk, before you go back to Zepho, he gives you he words you up about Saw potentially taking you for a ride. That's the last thing he says, and that's the last thing he does. And like, I don't know why. I get maybe he's not. Maybe he just feels guilty because you were in danger, and he does have like a legitimately tender moment after this where he's like, hey, I kind of been coasting through life, and you two have kind of given me a reason to live. I care about y'all. Seemingly after 5 minutes, it's weird, but like it is heartfelt.
Yeah.
Like, but I get it. Like, it's nice, it's sweet, and this voice actor is killing it. I really really like all the performances here. So maybe he's not apologizing for anything directly, but rather he just has a sense of guilt. And maybe he knew about Trilla, right? maybe he knew that Trilla was Seer's apprentice, and he's apologizing for putting Cal in danger by not telling him. But the story refuses to talk about the one interesting idea it has, which is like, what do we do with this conflict? And at every opportunity, like it to the point where like I was sitting there last night, high as a kite, yelling at my TV, going like, why won't they talk about this? Like it. Just have dozens of conversations that make this the entire focus of your video game script. This is like this would be like in Andor if they never talked about labor conditions and the Empire and the rebellion, and you'd be like, what? Why won't they talk about it? It's so weird. I'm getting animated.
I'm just imagining your neighbors like sitting there listening, and they think they live next to a schizophrenic or something. They just hear you shouting all of these really weird things.
Yeah. Look, I mean...
Why won't they talk about the labor conditions on Camino?
I'm trying to look up a conversion. Let me tell you how hot it is at the moment. Hold on. Because it's currently 97 degrees Fahrenheit. So everything is closed up. All the air cons have been on. Like, I haven't been able to go outside for like a week. So it's just me in a sealed-in apartment yelling to my television, which is somehow sadder, I think. But look.
So somewhere in that scene, she does talk about Trilla.
Yeah.
I think it's that scene.
Well, so...
And we get the story of, like, actually, like, her being tortured and stuff.
That's late. That's when you get back to the ship, I think. Because it's definitely not there.
Is it on the way to Kashyyyk? I think it's on the way to Kashyyyk, because nothing...
Might be.
Well, I don't think anything happens after you get back to the ship.
Well, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention about the prison break part was I had to check the dates on this. I was like, okay, because like we go in there and it's like, I am the master of the ring and blah blah blah, and you will die, and it's a Jedi, and I was like,
etc. and
this
so forth.
feels this. I was like, this feels very cliche. This feels very like Ragnarok or Thor Ragnarok right here.
Yeah,
and I
had the same thought.
I was like, what was the years on that? So yeah, Ragnarok was 2017. This was 2019. I'm like, okay, so did that? Well, I was a couple things like. I think you've probably nailed why that part felt like mostly or too cliche for me, which was that we have this enterprise or whatever you want to call it that's going on here, and we don't do anything about it. We just leave, as opposed to like that being a big boss that we have to defeat. That we kill the droid that brought us, and we're just out, and that's the end of it. And everything. So I think that could be why like that part I felt was too cliche for me.
Interesting.
Because remember the cliche rule is that a cliche done well is not a cliche.
Oh, what?
Did we lose you?
What?
That was Brandon Sanderson. A cliche done well is no longer a cliche.
Ironic, given his books. Unnecessary drive-by. I'm like,
ooh.
I'm this far into the Final Empire at the moment, and it has all the things I was worried it would have. He's a fine enough writer. I just think we should aspire to more. Anyway, that's a conversation for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I'm trying to look through the script and find where we have that conversation with Seer, and I think you're right, Darth. I think it's when the ship lands on Kashyyyk, potentially.
I definitely don't think anything happens after you explore Kashyyyk and then come back. I don't think there's anything, so it's got to be when they're on the way.
It's very brief,
which,
though, isn't
side
it?
note,
yeah,
I would love for y'all to pay attention to the ship from now on and see what you think about the tail fin that sometimes is pointing up and then it moves to the side and then it'll point back up. And I don't know if there is any actual thought behind when it moves, because when it's in space, I think it's straight up. And then when they go through the atmosphere, it's straight up. When they go into land, it goes to the side and then goes straight back up right before they land. So like the only purpose of it is stabilization in the 5 seconds before landing.
Now, you wouldn't know this because you want a Star Trek kid. But one of the biggest challenges with intergalactic vessels that travel through space is that they're often built and designed to work in space, not in atmosphere. So in the original Star Trek Next Gen, one of the kind of leading notes is that the Enterprise can never go into atmosphere because it was entirely built and assembled in space for space travel. So I think this is them being like, look, both ways, motherfucker. I think this is them being like, and it'll be a cool toy, right? Star Wars.
I would have been fine with it if, like, the second they enter atmosphere, it drops from vertical down to horizontal, and now it's like the wing of an airplane. Like, that would make sense. But from my memory, it only went horizontal in, like, the few seconds right before landing, and then went back vertical. So I'm like, what was the point of it? But
I got you on this, because if you think about an Imperial shuttle, right? Like, what are those wings for? And it's because
aesthetic.
No, they're not, because the answer is they're not. Yes, it's aerodynamics. And so, David, I think each of you have brought up very key points to why stuff is the way it is, and that you have the Enterprise, which is not designed for atmospheric travel. The smaller ships are designed to go both operate in space and in atmosphere. So when you're on the descent in the atmosphere, it is beneficial to have those aerodynamics, or not aerodynamic surfaces, but surfaces that provide lift, so that when it is in the atmosphere, you get a horizontal plane which provides some lift and helps with maneuvering in the atmosphere, but it doesn't need that right when it's going to land, because it's got repulsor jets. So
the comparison doesn't really track, though, because every Star Trek landing shuttle is designed functionally the same way as all of the big ships. They have the two engines in back.
But
it was the 90s. It was the 90s.
No. It's different universe, different rules. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, Star Wars, the exceptions to this would be something like the Millennium Falcon, which doesn't have any of that. But that is just basically just a big wing, and is completely impracticable for any sort of travel anyway, because you can't see most of the ship from the cockpit. I think we talked about that before too. Yeah.
Damn,
so
we gotta do with that one scene on the Rey backflip Falcon situation, because we could probably talk about that for 2 hours, just that one scene, because it implies so much about, like, what ships are. But yeah, to circle back, unless you had anything else on the wing, Rye.
No,
I do have.
That was just that was an ass pull of an explanation. I don't know.
No, that was good. Maybe old guys should talk about video games.
Hold on. I found it. All right, so now it's vertical. Now it's flipping horizontal as they're coming in for a landing.
And then it goes vertical.
Yeah,
again.
to help.
And
with
then
lift.
as they land, it goes back up.
Yeah. So it's there to help with lift. Is what I'm going
Yeah, it's to slow the descent.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I thought you were originally going to say was not the thing about that it was designed in space, or designed and built in space. What I thought you were going to say is one of the challenges is keeping the ship stable or from rolling in space.
That's actually a really good point. But, okay. The conversation. So in my summary, I specifically called this out because they don't actually talk about what's going on. So I'll give you the dialogue. So Cal comes back on the ship and he says, Cal, we have another complication. The Empire knows about the holocron. Seer, that's not good. The entire mission is now at risk. Cal, and I had a nice chat with the second sister, Trilla. Seer, what did she tell you? Cal, she told me you betrayed her to the Empire. Is it true? Seer, she'll say anything to jeopardize this mission. Cal, is it true? Pause. Seer, she was my apprentice before the purge. Cal, you should have told me. Grease, we're getting an encrypted message from Kashyyyk, and then they both go, later, we have our lead, basically, and they don't talk about it. So that's in my notes where I'm like, they proceed to not talk about it. That's them not talking about it, which I think is like... Was that what you were referring to, or was there different dialogue that you were thinking of?
There's later dialogue as well.
That's what I thought, right?
Yeah, there's something where she says like I was tortured. This dark force presence, obviously referring to Vader, was the one that broke her. I thought that happened right there when they were like Cal sits down to eat with them. I thought it happened right there, but
Maybe
I'd
it's
have to
at
go.
the-
look
did-
at it
it's at
again.
the end. It's at the end when you get back to the ship.
That the part where they're eating, right?
Yes.
Did you? My friend was where she's watching this. She's like, "Oh boy, is seasoning the fuck out of that food."
Right?
Yeah.
It was like 2 minutes of seasoning.
And then BD1 like scans his food like right there at the end. Did you notice? Did you see all that?
The script here has beeps knowingly. Okay. Here you go. Sia and Grease look at each other, look at Cal, back at each other, down their plates, and then back at Cal. Sia. Cal, when I was captured by the Empire, I resisted. I swore to myself that I would die before I would talk. Cal puts down his utensils and looks at Sia, unsure if he wants to hear this. Sia. But then this dark shadow came, and he was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. And I still fought, but in the end, I came apart. And I gave them Trilla. And I know there's nothing I can do to make that right, but Cal, there's still a chance we can save the others on the holocron. Cal, exasperated. Okay, look, the Ninth Sister said something about becoming an Inquisitor, like it's inevitable. But you went through the same thing she did, and you didn't join them. And then another interruption, and then they don't talk about it. But yes, that is the piece of dialogue that you're alluding to. I think what's interesting, it's interesting that you picked up on Vader immediately. What was your your intuition then? Just that he was?
For a good minute, I've been thinking there's no chance that he's not going to be at the end of this game. I mean, the time period and all that, and then we know who's in charge of the Inquisitors. And then if you name drop a big baddie and you're like, he's the biggest baddie of them all, then, and you don't name him, then obviously in my mind you were talking about Vader. I could be wrong. Could be talking about someone totally different. They could be talking about the Grand Inquisitor or something. But Vader was my initial thought.
Okay, no, just interesting. But this is
another funny.
Yeah, you go.
As another funny side note, because we like skipped ahead to the meal. Did y'all notice that like Cal's been like running around on climbing trees on Kashyyyk for however many days, and so he's got to be starving. He sits down to eat, and then doesn't take a single bite, and then gets up and storms away from the food. And I'm like, bro, you need to eat. Yeah. Sit back down.
You got to get his macros in, man. This dude he's falling off for sure. Yeah, it's intense, man. This season of Daredevil in the Details is brought to you by the Maynard Trigg series. These are my Dying Earth science fantasy steampunk coming of age novels. The third book is out now. You can grab the first book, Maynard Trigg and the Creature Beneath the Veil, hardback or paperback. It's on special right now at underink.press. Appreciate any support you guys give. These books are one of my favorite things I've ever done. I'm super proud of them, and I would love you guys to check it out. If you're interested in the stuff we do, I guarantee you'll enjoy these books. Head to underink.press and grab your copy today. Okay, well, let's quickly do the summary for Kashyyyk then, shall we? So we can dig into it. It's the bit starting on the next page of the document, if you would.
Okay. All right. After an extended sequence traveling through a Kashyyyk jail cell, Cal gets directions to the...
Jail cell?
Or wait.
Jail. Jail.
Jail?
Yeah, that's what the script says.
Okay. After an extended sequence traveling through a Kashyyyk jail, Cal gets directions to the origin tree. Cal remembers the Jedi double jump. Cal catches a lift from a bird, gets the double-bladed lightsaber. On the way back, Cal is confronted by the Ninth Sister. During a protracted laser sword fight, Cal sort of wins and hitches a ride back on the Shio bird to the Mantis. Destination, Dathomir.
I really had to finesse the summary to get Destination Dathomir in there because it sounds like an indie band.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, I think
they would do
Kashyyyk
Burning Man on Dathomir.
Hey?
I said they would do Burning Man on Dathomir.
Oh, dog. And you know they got that good sticky icky. Like, so, okay.
The Night Sisters, yeah.
Oh, bro, them Night Sisters are spliffing up, son. They got the goods. And you know they're sharing, too. They ain't stingy. Mm-hmm. They got a big supply. Okay, I think Kashyyyk is like... I think this Kashyyyk... I have two thoughts about this at a very, very high level. I think the the crescendo when you fight the Night Sister and the way it builds up to that is both the game at the height of its powers as far as like what it's trying to do, and then on the flip side, I think that the level leading up to it and some of the puzzle design is some of the more confusing and weaker shit that we've seen so far, which is what I was saying at the top of the summary at the very start of the episode. What did y'all think? Talk me through it.
I hate spiders. The end.
For me, it was those vine things. Like, nothing creeped me out. Like those vine things that slowly come towards you.
Oh,
and they're like chomping at you, and like your lightsaber doesn't hurt them. Like, that fact terrified me. Like, the lightsaber being unable to cut this creature, and it's just gonna come up and start sucking on me. Like, I had issues.
There were a couple points where I'm like climbing along the vine and everything, and they're like getting too close. I'm like, nope, just hit Z. Let me just drop into the void.
Yeah, you're like, I ain't dealing with this.
Yeah.
It's
Did you get either of you get caught by the fly traps?
Nah.
On purpose.
What? Oh, just
I would just walk into them.
You're an insane person. Nah, dog. I was on my pro gamer shit. I was that perfect level of where I was like fully locked in. I was parrying everything in this level. I was dodging everything. I was on some speedrun shit, y'all. Like, it was. You should have. And now that could be my memory being clouded by how intoxicated I was, but it certainly felt like I was crushing it.
I had the exact opposite experience, and I started to message y'all angrily because I ran. So you're supposed to be going to the dark forest or whatever it is, right? And finding Tarforl there, and I went around the entire. So when you first get on, you go like over an elevator, and the elevator, it's not an elevator because it's horizontal. Yeah. So you take that tram across, and it takes you across like 3/4 of the level, and then you keep going. I went across there, doubled back, went all the way back to the ship on the lower level, and then had to do it all again because I couldn't flipping find it. And so yeah, I've spent the first like 30 minutes just doing circles around the map, unable to figure out where I was supposed to find the Dark Forbidden Forest. And then I just accidentally stumbled upon it.
It is a poorly designed level. I can't believe that why I get to be the Star Wars guy. So this is the Shadowlands, which we've seen multiple times in Clone Wars, and I can't believe you're doing it dirty like this, Darth. It's in the Clone Wars a couple times. It's in KOTOR. You go there when you go to Kashyyyk and KOTOR. You go to this area. It's like a
what season? Because
oh god, I don't remember.
If it's still the late, because the only like Shadowlands I remember were the episode with the four-armed Jedi who like turns traitor, and that was a different planet. That wasn't Kashyyyk, but it was also like quote unquote Shadowlands.
Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, I just know that it's a thing in Star Wars because I immediately recognized it when they said it.
One excuse me, one world building note that I have on here is that two world building notes actually. The first one is it really bugs me when you see the same. Actually, no, that's a world building note for next time. But I'll just throw it in here because I'll probably forget. But it really bugs me when you see the same bugs on or mobs on different planets.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But the main note that I had here is that it is a moment of incongruity to me, or the implausibly unbelievable, where it's like I don't see how you get an advanced civilization whose homeworld is as yet untamed to such an extent as Kashyyyk is.
Well,
and I know that's a Star Wars thing, but it bothers me. Now, it would make sense if this was not their homeworld and this was just like sort of like where the Wookiees set up shop.
It's not their so the Shadowlands specifically for the Wookiees are a place where they never go. It's like the untamed wilds, right? It's like the wilderness. Like you're in the unpopulated part of Kashyyyk. And I realize that Star Wars, all planets are one thing, but if for some reason Kashyyyk is the weird exception, where like the coastal parts of Kashyyyk, where you're near the ocean, is where the Wookiees live, and then the Shadowlands is like the deep jungle where they don't live. So it's like untamed wilderness.
I mean, even then, to like back up what Rai is saying, like there was one creature that you fight, which maybe the spider, but when you read the description about it, it says that Wookiee children are taught from the age of like 2 years old how to defend themselves because they have to fight off these things so frequently.
What?
And like if that's your life, then how are you able to develop a spaceship if you're like there's a thing about to eat me, you're like right behind me?
No,
Yeah.
So
I mean, like especially Australia fought a war with birds. Don't forget.
We lost too, so we're not proud of that at all.
So yeah, if you have problematic wildlife, you would eliminate it.
You
100%.
Or you'd try, because let me tell you, emu's hard to shoot. Even harder to shoot camels. We have a camel problem in Australia. We have more camels in Australia than anywhere in the world. They're just out there, in the outback. There's just camels fucking everywhere. It's crazy. Yeah, you would try and eliminate them.
More camels.
But yes, you're right. It is. This is what I mean. I just think this is like I think conceptually it's a cool idea. I think in practice it's like a bad level. Like, the ideas in it don't really come together. Cal has spent most of the game so far when he interfaces with creatures murdering them, and when he gets to the origin tree, the big bird is like, hey, that's the homie, jump on my back. Like, what? He's killed more of the flora and fauna in this. Like, that's just what you did for like the hour before you get there, is kill all the shit on this planet. Like, there's just this sense of like disconnection between this isn't ludonarrative dissonance. Take me back to 2012, am I right? Like, but that was a really big part of the discourse for a long time, especially in some of the games this is cribbing off of, like Uncharted, right? Was these questions of like, man, Nathan Drake sure is murdered hundreds of people, but acts like he's a cool Indiana Jones type. And I feel like this is facing similar challenges with its conceits and ideas, right? Cal is killing all of this shit, and that implies that all this shit is running around, which implies that the Kashyyyk are dealing with it, which is seemingly backed up by the like in-world description of the creatures, and which then raises more questions about the world building, which then makes you go, hey, does this make sense? And that's when what we always talk about, right? You're suddenly out of it. You're out of the story. There's a combinatory element there, which has pushed you away from being invested in what's occurring. And it got to the point where, for me at least, by the time I finished this level, I was like, I could come back to Kashyyyk never again and not be bothered. Like, I think for what should be the most interesting place, especially with the partisans and Saw and everything that implies, for what should be the most interesting place, it's just really nothing. I don't know. So to kind of counter that argument, like, I don't think at all in this game have I killed anything that wasn't like actively attacking me. So it's not like I never even had the thought of, I see this big beautiful bird and like, of course I'm gonna kill it. And like right before that, there's like this like peaceful little monkey that you come upon up in the trees, and he's just like sitting there like picking at his fleas or whatever, and I just like sat there and like pretended to talk to him for a little bit. So I don't know that the first reaction should have been like he's this, you know, murderous dude. He's just like everything that he kills, he's defending himself against, because it's like, you know, actively attacking him.
But I'm still reading about the camels.
Just reading about camels.
Between 2010 and 2013, the Australian feral camel management project killed 160,000 camels.
Yeah, we got a lot of camels here, man.
Mostly through helicopters.
Yeah, it's crazy. They go up in helicopters and then they just to your point, Darth. But like, that's my point though. Is like, it's like colonialism brain where it's like, but Cal shouldn't be there. Like, he is in their environment fucking with their shit. Like, he should not be in these places where these creatures appear. The Empire shouldn't be in these places where these creatures appear. Like, ipso facto, he's doing the wrong thing by killing them. Which the second game seems to overcorrect and gives you, like, animal control powers, which we might get to one day.
Well, I mean, you can also run past most of these guys.
It's true. You could do the right
which
technique.
Is what I do. Yeah, that's right out of the NPC man Dark Souls thing, which I think we talked about. It's just run past.
Just run past. That's true. But so like I don't disagree, Darth, but that's my reasoning there. Is like he doesn't need to be there. And the fact that he is like implicitly a problem for me. But that's also just me bringing my politics to everything because it's inevitable for me. So it's like I think a more artful version of this is like, I mean, I guess the game kind of does this to your point, right? Which is like he kind of does have to kill him to get where he's going to a certain extent. I mean, he could run past, like as Rai says, but I guess the game structures it as these are mindless creatures that are going to kill you anyway. It doesn't matter. Like the Stormtrooper and Spider equal same, right? Like they're not supposed to be moralized in the same way that a speaking character is, which is like a choice.
My friend did ask me if it was possible to not kill the Stormtroopers because their pleas for mercy really bother her. They did such a good job with the Stormtroopers in this.
So good.
Like the guy's like, oh no.
Oh no.
It's like, I'm all by myself now. Oh god.
They do this really annoying video game thing where if you spare them and you walk away, they wait till you're not paying attention and they turn around and they try and shoot you. So even if you spare them, they will try and kill you, and then you have to murder them, which is unfortunate. So the answer is no.
So I have a really
you gotta murk them.
I have a really ironic note considering how much you seem to hate this level, David, because
God.
I was jiving so much. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed. I turned off the music, and on my Google Home I turned on like extra forest ambiance, so I had complete surround sound forest ambiance. I loved it. I love the woods. I used to like go backpacking and camping like all the time. So like this, being in that environment, like after you get out of the dark, scary mushroom underground and you're actually climbing the big tree.
Oh, that
and
rules.
Like yeah, like make that open world, and I would have spent so much time like jumping around on vines and stuff and just like looking at the pretty mountains and all this landscape. Like, well, I loved that so much.
You should play the Avatar game, right?
I was gonna say the new Avatar game is that.
That would suck me in big time.
Apparently the writing's terrible, but I mean it looks incredible. I've never seen a game that looks that good. Like, yeah, it just, what the fuck. Yeah.
So was there anything to talk about in the Darklands? Because I had something like when you're going to the tree.
My first note is when I'm at the tree. So no, what do you got?
Okay, so first getting there, you get given the rebreather, like when you meet Tarful, and so you get the rebreather, and then you get to go underwater, which you had warned me. You're like, you're gonna love this, and yeah, I like swam in circles and recorded it, and I was doing all kinds of fun stuff.
It's the coolest. I was like, this is Darth bullshit right here. This is when I was half expecting the first time you do it for that music to play when Obi and Qui-Gon first dive in the lake with Jar Jar. I was expecting that like kind of haunting like high piano to play, and it didn't. I was disappointed.
It was cool. It was beautiful, and like how murky they made the water and I loved the aesthetic of diving through all the deep roots and trying to find your way and all this kind of stuff. But then at one point it hit me, and this is like very much like a structural storyline issue of like, he literally says, how do I get to the top of the tree? And she's like, well, follow the root system and start climbing. And I'm like, you came in on a spaceship. You came in above the top of the tree. Just go back in your spaceship and then go to the top of the tree.
Ironically, they use the spaceship to drop him off in medias res the first time you come to Kashyyyk as well. They drop him in the water. Yeah, it's one of those like, hey, it's kind of that thing of Doctor Who where it's like, why don't you just use the TARDIS though? And this game doesn't have a good explanation for that ever, I don't think. But yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, the only thing that I would say to that is it's a pain in the ass to get back to the ship.
They also haven't figured out comms. Like, that part is also messing with me. Like, he could just radio them and be like, yo, can you come pick me up and like take me a few clicks north?
Oh, so the game does have an answer for this, but it's buried in like the data bank like stuff. On planets where the Empire exists, the gang can tap into their relays, so they have like working radio. On planets where it's less connected, they can't. So on Kashyyyk, by the time you get into the Shadowlands, you're going beyond the Empire's relays for their radio signals, so you don't have like radio signal. It's never explained, but it is in a databank thing about, I think it's about the like prison on Kashyyyk. That's just before the shadow, the bit that you go into before you go properly into the dark stuff, dark place. But yeah, weird choices. Yeah, this is a good point. But I mean, like, stories have to happen. So it's like, maybe spend a bit more time figuring out why they wouldn't just use the ship and find a way to, like, put that in the story in a way that's not obtrusive, and then you're good. You're golden, right? I think the fact that it's an outstanding question, it's a little sloppy, but well, yeah, what are you gonna do?
No, I don't agree. It would be very awkward to insert him on using a ship into that sort of environment, right?
Well, there's also a really, really easy workaround that I'm kind of confused they didn't go with, because he has this whole thing where he's sensing all of these echoes, but the echoes are almost never connected to the main story. So just flip it and be like, he's retracing the path that this old master took, and so he's sensing the echoes of the old master, so you can't do it from the air, you can't do it from a ship, you have to be going along the ground and finding this place where he stepped and sensing the echo of his step in order for you to retrace his steps. Like, that would make so much sense, and it would tie into the Force power and tie into the main story and all that, but they don't do it.
Well, expanding on that, I think that I keep having the thought of the echoes are pretty lame. Like, they don't really add any. I was gonna say my Discord just sucks right now, but like the echoes don't really add very much, or pretty much anything at all. Like, I think I talked to you guys, I believe, about the echoes in the Division and how they use them for world building or telling stories in the world through like series of echoes, but they were there. It's kind of out of the original BioShock game, where the game designer was like, there's story buried in there if you want to find it, but if you don't care, then you don't have to go looking for it. But if you do go looking for it, it's there. And that's kind of the same idea. So like these echoes that are scattered around there, I would appreciate it more if they added something. But it's just like, you come across a dead Wookiee and it's like, oh, this guy's a dead Wookiee. Okay.
Some of them are
They're more
literally
just like factoids.
Yeah.
It does feel, it feels like it's there because video games do that rather than they had a clever idea of what to do with them.
Yeah.
And that's also the main way that your Force skills points are earned, is every time you do the sense and echo, that's what fills your bar up the most. And so it's like they knew they had to hide these things around, but they didn't know what to do with them. So like, because like one of the things that you find is the bandolier that fell off one of the Wookiees when he was climbing, and like all Cal says when he senses the echo is like, somebody dropped this while they were climbing.
What does that have to do with the Force? Do you need the Force to sense that?
Could you imagine?
So like, I want to imagine that he's there with a non-Force sensitive person. It's like, yeah, no shit.
He's like, yeah, dude. Yeah. You think someone left it behind on purpose? Dumbass? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, Cal's he's very green is the way he's presented, right? He's pretty green behind the ears in this game. But even for him, some of the shit he says with this stuff is like, guys, second pass of that dialogue, please. Please. Okay, let's move things along. I guess any notes on the tree, I think is, Darth already said it. The visuals on this shit, especially on the PS5. Oh my giddy aunt, this game looks good, man. Like, climbing up that tree, I was like, holy jeez. Like, it pops, man. Yeah, I mean, I still have all the same complaints about the Cordova stuff, so I won't litigate that. But yeah, if you guys got anything on the tree before we talk about the old boss of Rooney?
One thing that I had was which you may not have seen it, but you go around like the hill of a dead trunk or something, which is weird to say because you're like in the trees. but there's a single feather laying there, and like you sense the echo of the feather, and then you learn something. But you're able to kind of like look around, and you know how you could like navigate the camera so you could see like underneath and above it and stuff, and the feather is like translucent, which was just really interesting. I'm like, what animal would have translucent feathers like that? And then secondarily, oh, that would make it much harder to see, so that's like an evolutionary, you know, advantage. So of course that makes a whole lot of sense. So that was just really, like, we haven't even seen the thing up close really, but I was like, that's kind of cool.
Especially how big it is. That would be a really useful kind of feature, right, to blend into the sky. That's cool. That's a really, hey, that's a really, really good, like, world building note. I like that.
And I've got one, whenever we actually ride the bird, there's another matching one that's really interesting.
God.
If you want to skip to that, if y'all don't have anything.
Yeah, I got nothing else until we get to the boss.
I don't have anything on the tree, but you somehow you reminded me of, I was thinking of how Saw just fucked off.
Yeah,
He's like, well, things got too hot, so I'm out.
Yeah, that's literally what happens. He's like, yeah, too much heat for me, I'm gone.
Which also doesn't make... this didn't clock when I was playing, but the story tells you that it got too hot, so he left, but it's not. There should have been more Imperial ships. There should have been more stormtroopers. There should have been evidence of why he left, but
if anything, there's less. You're right.
Yeah,
because you go through some of the areas that you've been through before, and the enemies aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really clock. So it kind of was like he did what Kryze said, and he abandoned them for no reason. Is kind of how it came across.
But that's also Saw as a character, right? Like, and that's kind of what Kryze alludes. I'm not defending this choice. I just think it's. I think if we give this game more credit than it deserves, what I would say is, I think if this were actually Saw written how he is in Rogue One and Andor, and to an extent Clone Wars as well, right? He is a guy who Clone Wars, I meant Rebels. He's a guy who, like, that's kind of his thing, is like he always has an ulterior motive, some hidden agenda, some hidden scheme that he's running outside of whatever he's told you. So this doesn't make sense in the story, but I think it could have been interesting if they wanted to pull on those levers, they were available, and they kind of choose not to, because this is inconsequential. This never matters for the story later that he left. And given where I know this story goes, there is multiple opportunities for them to pull on that lever and go, hey, remember how Saw fucked off? Now that's a problem. And they don't. And there's one moment in particular, which I'll point out when we get to it, where it's like, you can see the outline in the script of where you would have said the thing about Saw, and they just don't. So it's a real missed opportunity, in my opinion. So I agree. I think odd choice, guys. And also not needed. He could have just been there. It wouldn't have made a difference to the level.
Yeah, you could have just been there and you just didn't talk to him.
Yeah, like, that's fine.
He's like, I'm busy looking through these files, man.
I'm reading.
Or Saw is over there fighting the Imperials, and you don't need to go over talk to him.
They probably just had to get rid of him because Trilla had shown up and she had murdered everyone there, so he couldn't have been there because they needed him to be alive.
Oh, that's 100% what they've done. Yeah, that sucks.
Well, she wasn't there though. She was on Zaffo, right?
Zepho. No, well,
Zepho.
because she went to Kashyyyk and then killed everybody while you were doing your fighting pitch shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like
so the thing about Saw is that makes him interesting is like I want to say he's the grayest character morally that we've seen in Star Wars prior to Andor. But he's not a coward. He's just very pragmatic in the sense of I will do the bad thing for the good reason. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I just don't think this works on any level. But I think Darth's absolutely right. They went, shit. Saw can't be dead. I guess he left.
He can't be there, but he can't be dead, but he can't be there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. and they just didn't find an interesting thing to do with that, I guess, which unfortunate.
We're making more out of this than there really is. But
I know, that's what I said
that's
before
what we
started
do
talking
here.
about it.
Something else that I only just now clocked was in the midst of all of this, he remembers how to do his double jump,
Brother,
which the game calls Jedi jump.
oh,
Which just kills me.
I've written
Trademark.
down here. I've written down here.
You gotta get that branding.
Jedi flip TM. What the
In his
fuck,
his
man?
Jedi Jordans.
in his Jedi Yeezys, bro.
And then the other part of that just killed me was like he remembers that last. Like it would have been the most helpful thing to remember first. Like even better than wall running.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, Darth. I don't know that. I don't know that force-based psychotherapy works that way. You can't
Yeah,
pick
I
and
know.
choose what heals.
I know, but it just felt like such a conscious decision by the game developers that they were like, now you get to use this thing that we have previously obviously restricted.
To the point
it-
where in the first episode you were like, I would kill for a double jump. Like the game knows it, and yeah, they just go, nah, not for you, son. This one for us, not for you. Yeah, it's very annoying. It's a bit like what Rye was talking about. It has some energy of that first Assassin's Creed, where the first level you're like, oh my god, I have all these tools and weapons and gadgets and I've got all these combos and shit, and then they're like, nah, son, we're taking all of that away and you're gonna earn it back over the course of the next 20 hours. And it's like,
You're
oh
going
well, maybe
back to basics.
it's like maybe don't show me the cool stuff then, because
Well, there was also an audio cue in there where he goes, I forget exactly what his line is, but it's essentially to signal that you've learned everything that you had forgotten.
Yeah.
And so my friend was like, so we don't get anything else? And I'm like, I don't know.
I should clarify for people not playing. So basically, like all of Cal's other powers, some random thing in the world reminds him of, or like unlocks some forgotten force power, and it's a flashback with his old master, and this is like the double jump. But yes, it does imply that this is the last. So this is the last thing Cal will remember. It's not the last thing he will learn to do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't believe no one mentioned this, but do you remember what happens right before he has the flashback with his master?
No.
It is the most... Okay, so you were high, you were drunk, so maybe it didn't register.
Gee, that could just be the name of the show.
So he's like mid-jump. He's jumping from this like platform to this platform in the jungle, and then mid-jump, he goes into this like alternate dimension, and he's like jumping through like thick air or water, and everything is black and white, and he's jumping on these like plant things. And then on the last one, when he lands, he goes into the actual memory with his master. And I'm kind of like mildly freaking out and like, what just happened? What was that? And there's no explanation at all of this like alternate universe that I just popped into for no reason.
That's happened with all of the flashbacks, though. It's the bit that precedes all of the flashbacks is, and granted this is like mid-activity, but that's what happens in all of them. If you remember the first one, which is the wall run, he touches the wall, he sees the geckos running on the wall, he touches the wall, and then the wall snaps into the same dream reality, and then you run and jump on it, and then it cuts to the
Darth
flash.
was high,
that's-
or he was drunk. He doesn't remember.
Well, no, that's the only one that I do remember, but it wasn't to this extent. It was just the same room in kind of like black and white. You know?
No,
but
they've all been
this,
in color.
I gotta look back and see what other ones there were, because this was like the things you were jumping on like literally changed to like an alternate dimension, because they were just like tree stumps.
Yeah.
But in this alternate dimension, they were like glowing somethings, you know?
Interesting. Well, I mean, thankfully
Alternate
it never
dimension.
happens again. So this is the last one. Yes, I mean we're arguing specifics that we could easily check by googling, but we shan't. Okay, yes. Should we talk about the boss? Because I got a hard out soon.
Yeah.
let's talk. So the ninth sister, she's here. She's boy. Darth, do you want to talk about the bird? Because it seems like you had some notes on writing the bird.
I just thought it was really interesting. Like one of those, it may have been when you looked at the feather, but it gives you a description of the bird, and it talks about how it is able to conserve so much energy when it is flying that it never has to flap its wings, and it always just glides everywhere because it's so good at conserving energy. And it only has to eat like once a week because it's so good at conserving energy. And then as soon as you get on it, and as soon as it takes off, it starts flapping its wings. And I'm like, did you not read the description that you wrote for this creature? Like, you are animating it exactly the opposite of the description that you wrote for it.
Well, hold on.
It was going down. It wasn't going up.
Shio birds were capable of gliding. Okay, well, never mind then. I was going to read you the description, but you've immediately poked a hole in it. But yes, Shio birds were capable of gliding significant distances while using a little energy due to their body shape and feathers. This efficiency meant that the average adult Shio only needed to leave its nest to hunt once per week. The birds ate slags and weeshocks, because everything on fucking Kashyyyk has 3 Ys in it, which meant they were perceived as protectors of Kashyyyk's native Wookiees and Washok trees. Sightings of the bird were known as being a guarantee of peace, whatever that means. Yeah. So there you go.
I mean, that wasn't like a huge harp. It was just like one of the little world building things that I was like, they could have just paid attention to what they were doing, and that was easily avoidable.
Yeah,
Not
but
that anyone would have even noticed.
This is a game written by at least 15 people, Darth. Okay, like it was probably just 2 different writers making 2 different, or like the writers making a different choice. This is the game director's fault.
They probably animated it before they wrote the thing down, and then somebody was like, "Well, we ain't going back to change that."
Yeah. I mean, it's the game directors. This kind of stuff that you would pick up on. This whoever produced and directed.
I don't remember what music was playing. There was some music that was playing, but both my friend and I started singing the Jurassic Park song.
It does have, it's got that energy, huh?
But I was looking at the bird and going, that does not look like it has hollow bones. Like this thing looks like it weighs a lot.
Yeah. That's oh god, that's like the conversation that I always hear a bunch of people have whenever it's a film where they're like, "Oh my god, it's like a giant cockroach or a giant like ant or whatever," and it's like that motherfucker would not be able to move. Like it operates on a different level of physics because it's so small. If you make it big, it'd just fall over. Like, it'd just be pinned to the ground at all times.
Not only that, but they're limited by the amount of oxygen that's in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Their size limited by the amount of oxygen that's in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Well, Kashyyyk is all trees, though.
Well, I'm not talking about the bird. I'm talking about a giant cockroach.
Yeah. It does look like a big motherfucker. But also, it's Star Wars, so you just gotta be like, okay.
And birds aren't real, so this is known.
It's true, and they shouldn't be trusted. It's the other thing about birds.
So don't you get your lightsaber before you fight her?
Yeah, so...
Double, yeah.
Yeah,
because you get the lightsaber, you see the hologram of what's-his-face.
My friend was just dying laughing. She's like, "Oh, of course, there's a workbench at the top of this tree." Because you just walk up and start messing around with your lightsaber or whatever. It was like, oh, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. He just did it."
I had the same reaction, just no one to bounce off of when I was doing it, because I was like, you just found this part up here at the top of the tree, and you're gonna attach it to your only weapon, and just assume it won't blow up.
Yeah.
Like.
Can I tell you guys a secret?
Go for it.
I've had a double lightsaber since the second recording session.
Nerd. Nerd. I'm pointing at you on the screen. Nerd.
Did you buy the DLC? Like, what's the secret here?
So, you know how I kept saying don't go to Dathomir?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
So, you can get... On Dathomir, there is a way to get the double-bladed lightsaber early if you know... There's a particular jump that you can make with a... It's not a glitch, but it's clearly not intended. where you can go and get the double lightsaber upgrade on Dathomir, which is one of the first things I did the second we unlocked Dathomir. So I've been double-bladed lightsabering all this shit the whole time in secret, because I'm just that guy.
You bastard.
But the thing is, you kind of need it for the hardest difficulty, like just the defensive capability alone, of being able to deflect 2 blaster bolts. But yeah, so I'm that bitch is what I'm saying.
This is also, this is such a nerdy like CinemaSins for me to even clock, but the choreography for how they did it, I wish they had someone that was actually like a fight instructor that was doing their animations, because they constantly had him doing like weird grips with it, where the entire purpose of the leverage of a bow staff is lost if you don't have grips here, where you have the leverage. And he kept doing all of these twists every time that he was in a lock with the Ninth Sister when they're fighting. And I'm like, you don't have leverage in that position. She would have immediately overwhelmed you. You are not using a double-bladed lightsaber properly. Guess why? You were not trained to use one. You were trained to use the single blade. And it's like, I've literally sparred with my friends who have not used a double-bladed, and they never use the bottom half of the blade. They only use the top half because that's all their brain can comprehend. That was just such an interesting little nerdy point to look at this game and say, like, I have a comparison in real life for this. It's interesting.
It's a little bit of Shadowversity in here.
Yeah,
well, it's the whole argument about Rey's thing and how she should have had a double-bladed lightsaber to begin with.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, so the reason I was saying nerd and I was pointing at you is I thought you meant you went out and bought a double-bladed lightsaber like in real life.
No, I wouldn't own a Star Wars thing, dog. Like, I got my baby Yoda and that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've got. Oh, there you go.
Ooh. Ooh. Is that? Darth Maul's?
Yeah, it's my baby.
Hey, it's fucked up. I knew it was Darth Maul's, isn't it?
No,
nerd.
You're awesome.
I don't like
appreciated.
Star Wars, I don't like Star Wars. Dog, God, that anyway. That when he unlimbers it and it's like, you're like, oh shit, crazy moment. God, what a cool moment intercut with some terrible decisions. Okay, let's talk the Ninth Sister and how this all kind of shakes out. So yeah, you get the lightsaber. You have another little holocron with Cordova where he's talking about this, that, and the fifth thing. Basically pointing you to Dathomir, more or less. To yet another Zepho Sage tomb. This time, Kujet on Dathomir. And yeah, that's because this game is just you're just following the main character who's already gone and done all the interesting stuff.
Right, did that confuse you at all? Because this broke me a little.
Did what confuse me?
The hologram of him and his explanation, and then like where you're being sent next.
Oh yeah,
because he's like this is the Zepho Astrium that I found here, and there's another one on Dathomir, and I'm like I almost like literally yelled at the screen, why do we care? We are after the list of the Jedi children that you have, and you're talking about this ancient stuff that we don't care about. The mission is the list. We're not looking for this Zepho stuff. You were looking for the Zepho stuff.
So he goes, at last I found my quarry, the Astrium, and he holds up a spherical object that's clearly supposed to be the hologram, and he says, used by the Zepho sages millennia ago. I hold in my hand a piece of galactic history. Oh, I will never be able to thank Tarful enough. Do you know what this means, my friend? No need to return to Dathomir. The darkness clouded every attempt at finding the Astrium inside Kujet's tomb, but the Force has provided a new path. Which is confusing, because he's saying, hey, you don't need to go to Dathomir, and the game is like, sick, Dathomir clock. It's just a confusing way to communicate this. Yeah. Basically to explain, because it is very confusing, this is after he's gone to Dathomir to that tomb, presumably where the holocron is. That's when he's recorded this recording. So when we go to Dathomir, there will be recordings from before this recording we just heard.
But it's also, we had talked about this before, that like they should have like changed the main focus of the story so it's not about the list of the children and it's about trying to track down the old sages and whatever knowledge they may have had, because now I am torn between, why are you talking about ancient stuff when we're looking at this list? We gotta find these kids because the Empire is right now going to kidnap them, and you're taking me on this whole tangent, you know?
Yeah. It's just confusing as shit. It's like, why do we care about these ancient dudes?
Why do we care about these kids?
Why do we why do we care about these kids though? What about these kids? What about these kids though? Okay, so we get the fight. Let's talk about the fight. Basically, Nine Sisters here. She's all brute force and shit. She's got all the usual tricks we, associate with the Inquisitor. She has that lightsaber that spins somehow. You kind of juke it out, and how did this go for you guys?
Well, I'm on the lowest difficulty, and it was still kind of tough.
I won't say it was tough, but like I had to use a stim like once. But I also, because it's on story mode, I don't really take the fights too seriously. I should probably bump it up like 1 or 2 notches, because it would be more entertaining. But one thing that you just kind of clued me in on is like she doesn't really fight. She has different moves than the second sister, but she doesn't actually. Her interaction with you when you fight isn't any different. And with her being such a brute force, you should almost be unable to parry her because she has so much strength behind each blow, but it's no different. So it's like they built her to fight differently, but practically they didn't follow through with that.
With her, I think I thought they kind of did that because it was, I want to say, I'm trying to remember how it went down, but like the things that I remember about that fight specifically were that I was at a distance most of the time, and she would turn. There was one of her attacks that like I never actually got to see because like we were at a distance. She would turn red, and then I would hit her with the force push, and that interrupts her. So that was basically just my MO on this fight was like force push, smack, 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 parry. Get into like that lock thing, whatever, and then back away, and then rinse and repeat. But like you couldn't really like hit her more than once, or at least I couldn't hit her more than once. I
went the opposite way, and I just let her hit me with everything.
I had to. This fight sucks on the hardest difficulty. It got to the point where I had to parry every attack I could, and then I was doing what Rye was just saying. Whenever she was doing whenever she's doing the distance and she goes red, hit her with the force push. But then all of her other red attacks, like that big jumping one and shit like that, you just have to get out of the way. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. And she would touch me once, and that'd be like most of my health. Like, this fight kicked my fucking ass. But I think the game has a fundamental challenge that it hasn't worked out yet, which is like, what does it mean? Because lightsabers don't. This is a Star Wars problem. It's just a this game problem. But like, lightsabers don't weigh anything. The second game figures this out, and it even gives you a lightsaber that's like designed like a longsword, I guess, that feels like it weighs a lot, even though it doesn't. But yeah, this game doesn't have any consistency of like what it wants to do with that idea, and I don't think Star Wars does either. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, this fight sucked for me. And to that point, I guess, about it communicating the strength and things like that. Certainly for me, unlike the second sister, where I was able to get a few good licks in, and like I was sort of moving around, like I was standing still and dodging around her attacks and then getting lots of hits in. This was just the whole fight for me was defense. I was getting like one hit in every 7 or 8 parries, and that was kind of how, for me at least, I experienced that strength thing. So it literally could just be like a difficulty skill issue in how the game wants to communicate that.
Oh, for me, it's definitely a skill issue.
Yes. I mean,
it was also like I loved the fact that they had her lose a hand, and she just like looks at it and she's like, "We're gonna keep going."
I
She says-
really did like that part where she's like, I forget what she said, but what she communicated I thought was like perfect for the character.
She
It was
goes,
something like, I've
you
killed
don't-
stronger people than
yeah.
you with one hand, or that kind of vibe.
she
Like,
goes,
I think it was
being
a lot about, it was dark side stuff, right? Or do you have
Yeah.
the quote?
I've got it. I'm looking at the script. So Cal cuts her hand off. And she falls to the ground. Cal says it's over. And she says, being an Inquisitor taught me no setback is too great. When you've already lost yourself, a limb's easy.
Yeah,
Dog,
that was good.
Come on. What a
And then she
fucking
drops
line of dialogue.
she was a Jedi too, right?
She goes, I was a Jedi. It'd be fun to bring you in, watch you crack like the rest of us. Just wait till the isolation, the torture, the mutilation, and your friends. You can't stop the Empire. And then Cal
Which
says,
I started to say earlier, because that's something that they're probably not going to explore, but it is super interesting that Seer went through the same thing that all of these other Padawans went through, where they were, tortured. Did we lose David?
I'm still here.
He's still here.
Okay, you froze on my screen. But she went through the same thing that all of these other people went through, and they all broke and turned to the dark side, but she didn't. Yet she is painted as the bad guy for turning in, for breaking at least to turn in her Padawan, but she didn't break enough to lose herself.
Yeah, that's true, but she feels like she did because she tapped into the dark side, right?
And she also had to cut herself off from the Force to not do that. Yeah.
And that's the Star Wars stuff I love, because that's this question, like, that's the Jedi, like, monastic teaching kicking in, where, like, the dogma of the Jedi is so ingrained that she can't see beyond the institutional framework she's been taught, which is that there is a light and a dark side of the Force. Not that they're of the same continuum, but that, like, once you cross that line, you can never go back. And she is trapped in herself, right? Like, she's trapped in this teaching and she can't escape it to realize and forgive herself. And so she never touches the Force. It's like a trauma response, right? She's like, but this is the one thing you're not supposed to do, and I did that, therefore I've lost myself, failing to realize that in doing so, and, like, what she wants, right? Her want is to atone for this mistake she made, this transgression. What she needs to do is forgive herself and be forgiven. And those are really interesting ideas when put in tension with the Jedi Order for me. And this game is thinking about that stuff. Boy, if it doesn't, like, completely make itself about that in the sequel. Like, this is the text of the second game is this stuff. Like, it's the most interesting, for me at least, it's the most interesting thing you can do with the Jedi as a concept, is be thinking about those questions. And I think Clone Wars gets into a lot of that, especially with Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship, where you get to see them ping off other Jedi Masters who have other philosophies and frameworks, and you kind of do get the impression that they are outliers in their conception of what the Force means and how it ought to be used. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, it's kind of really compelling to me that you've got this character, Seer, who very well could have become an Inquisitor, who kind of panicked and went, if I just shut all this shit off, then it'll never be a problem. Like, if I just don't touch it, it'll never be a problem. And then you've got Cal kind of going, like, I need you to mentor me and teach me and help me on this journey, kind of being afraid that, they're both kind of afraid that maybe she's the wrong person for the job, and, like, maybe she might color him with her mistake. Do you know what I mean? Like, that to me is kind of interesting. Whether they get there or not in this game is another question entirely, but I think you're right. I do really like that.
The thinking about the game is the more interesting part of the game.
Yeah, that's why I chose this format for this podcast.
That's like Star Wars in general, though. It's like so much of my favorite parts about it are not in the movies themselves. It's what the movies set up as possibilities.
And that's what you get when you take a classical story that you can put anywhere and put it in an interesting, well built out universe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we kind of said it already. So yeah, he chops off a hand, force pushes her off a cliff, basically, and then hitches a ride with the bird back to the ship. And then yeah, they have the conversation which we've already litigated a little bit about Seer and that sort of thing. And then yeah, we're off to Dathomir.
We did skip something that's probably worth mentioning just because I found it so iconic, which is like the first interaction with her. The bird winds up like tackling her ship to try to like save you, and the ship is like shooting you while you're going down all these mudslides and stuff, and you got to jump and hit on the floating flowers that shoot you up in the air, and then you go down another mudslide. And I loved that whole section, and then you meet the bird and force pull the thing out to heal it and have your bonding moment. There's a lot of cool stuff in this level that I really enjoyed, even if the main story was lacking in all the places that we've mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
So if you're playing the game at home, next time, play until you defeat 2 big bosses and return to the Manus, planning a return trip.
Yeah, so basically, do Dathomir is the next session. You guys will probably notice the point where you could have got the double-bladed lightsaber, and I think it will make for an interesting discussion around what the fuck they're doing with this stuff, because some of these choices are wild. And yeah, I mean, we're kind of running up to the big building tension of the game, right? So this is us sort of, in theory, we're going to Dathomir because this is where Cordova stashed the location of the holocron. The first time he went to Dathomir, when he went to that first temple. And so we should, when we go to Dathomir, learn of where it is, and then we'll go find it, and then that will be kind of the big the big climax will then happen. So yeah.
So he chose to hide the secrets of the Jedi children on the planet of the Night Sisters.
Listen, sometimes your evil sexy cult of witches, they got it on lock. They know what's up. Like, sometimes you gotta go to the baddies and be like, hey, you hide this for me? And you know Jedi, some Jedi be having some relations, right? Like, that's Jedi and Night Sisters. They got that like they got like hated, rivals to lovers energy.
There's a story waiting to be written there, and probably already has in some deep dark fan fiction.
Yeah. I mean,
but this is after Clone Wars, right? Is that, and that's canon, where like everyone's murdered, so there's no more Night Sisters there, right?
Isn't in Ahsoka? Isn't there a Night Sister there? She's a Night Sister, right?
Yeah.
They were all on a different planet, so they're going back to Dathomir at the end of Ahsoka, and the assumption was that all of those things that were in the boxes were like frozen Night Sisters, so they're going to repopulate Dathomir. But at that point, everyone should be dead besides Asajj.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I never actually finished Ahsoka.
Yeah, well, so if you read, what have I become?
Right?
If you read the Asajj book, it explains it.
See, you've got to push the glasses back on your nose before you say that.
Oh, fuck, man.
Actually, David.
I hate myself. It's fine. Yeah, it is explained. It's basically like there's like different sects of the Night Sisters, and you will get a partial answer in this level too. The game does try to address it. Kind of loses its grip on reality a little bit as it does so, but it does try and get there. We also get.
How long? Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna ask?
I was gonna say, how long do you have before you're hard out? Because I did want to ask my unrelated question. It's related to Star Wars. It's not related. Not related to
exactly 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, maybe this will be something for you to think about then. The unrelated question that I had was I was thinking about the Rey movie that may or may not happen. It's supposed to be beginning production next year, which would be unusual because of all the Star Wars movies that have come and gone or been announced and then been canceled. But I was thinking to myself, do I want that to be a good movie or do I want it to be a bad movie?
Oh, interesting.
Bad movies produce more content.
I mean,
but see, I'm of two different minds because, and I'll explain my reasoning here. Like, if it's a bad movie, so here's the thing: is I have some deeply antagonistic feelings towards the character of Rey generally because of the idea that she's getting the story that we would have liked to see Luke have had.
Or Luke's kid.
So there's that part of it, and I think, like, as she's overall like a pretty weak character, etc., and the sequels are not good and all that stuff, etc. But this whole argument of how popular were the sequels really, and they'll be popular later on, like the prequels were, because the kids, they're made for the kids, and the kids are going to grow up and they're going to become part of the online discourse. By the way, if you were an 8-year-old when The Force Awakens came out, you've been part of the online discourse for about 3 years now. So where are they? It's the Fermi paradox of sequels fans, is what I call it.
Yeah.
So my position on this is, if it's a good movie, but it doesn't do well because it's a one-off essentially. I don't think it's the start of a new trilogy. One-off Star Wars movies are a harder sell than mainline movies. See Rogue One and Solo.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a good movie but it doesn't do well, that supports the idea that she, as a character, doesn't bring the audience. But if it's not a good movie and it doesn't do well, it's because it wasn't a good movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because it's impossible to prove the negative. You can't prove that, like, because if it's bad, people are going to be like, yeah, it's because Rey's a bad character, which isn't necessarily true. Anything can be good. Yeah. Anything can be good.
But
that's
if
a really
it's good
interesting
and it doesn't,
point.
Yeah, but if it's good and it doesn't do well, that supports the idea that she doesn't have the fan base to support that kind of movie. However, you also have the issue of, if it's a good Star Wars movie, people might go to see it regardless of, of who the mainline character is. So that's the other potential issue with that. I think it's unfortunately it is unfortunately like the first test of the post-sequel era storyline that we're going to have.
Yeah, I kind of think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake. I think the idea is a mistake. I think I think they should just go like a couple hundred years in the future and just do like a soft reset. But that's a conversation.
Or they should take my idea and make the post-sequel era the interesting hellscape that it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead, it sounds like everything's hunky-dory and she's just going to rebuild the Jedi Order the way Luke was supposed to.
Give me a series of Cold War espionage Star Wars films. Let's go.
Yes! Yes. Take Rogue One, or not Rogue One, take Andor, and let me get Gilroy and move him over to the post-sequel era. It would be awesome.
Yeah. The trick to making good Star Wars is to hire people that hate Star Wars, it seems.
Yes.
Which makes sense. IMO. All right. I got to go. We're going to wrap up. Any pluggables, boys?
Nope.
Go watch.
Nothing here.
Go watch Rogue One. Go watch Andor again. I've been picking my way through Clone Wars again, and I got to like the middle of season 3, and I was like, whatever. Maybe I'll just dip in and I'll go watch the first episode of Andor, and I'm like 5 in already. That show fucking rules. Go watch Andor. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna plug. You guys know what's up. Zero Under Ink, you get it. I gotta go.
Book.
Goodbye. Next
Merry
episode.
Christmas, Happy New Year.
Dathomir. Yeah, next episode we'll be recording in the new year. But Dathomir, that's next. Go do that. All right. Darth, take us out with the classic Star Wars outro.
Hello there.
No, it's not.
And may the Force be with you always.
Always. Love it. All right, y'all. We'll catch you next time.